Blessings, beloveds. Anastasia with you, Cosmic Astrologer. Okay, so today I want to spend maybe 20 minutes just sharing with you something really important when it comes to the ego, the personality and ego as seen through the zodiac, but more specifically as seen through the 6th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house. These three houses, 6, which is the Virgo house, 8, which is the Scorpio house, and 12, which is the Pisces house, are the most complex houses in the entire zodiac. And one of the main reasons for that is because of what I'm going to share with you today, and that is what happens to the ego when we reach the 6th house, 8th house, and 12th house. Think about the whole zodiac and the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 houses as an unfoldment of the human being from birth to death. So that whole process of when one is born, as in an infant, a baby, and then they're a toddler, and then they're a small kid, and then they're a teenager and an adult, and etc., etc. Well, that process is actually seen through the entire zodiac, and it begins with Aries, which is where birth is. When we are born, that is an Aries experience. And just to give you a little example, Taurus, in terms of this unfoldment, Taurus is the stage of the toddler, you could say. You think about the toddler who starts to experience the world of the senses. So, it's about touching everything, putting things in their mouth, tasting, just exploring the world of the senses. That's Taurus. That's why Taurians are such sensual creatures, okay? But anyway, that's not going to be the focus today. I'm not going to go through the whole 12 signs in this context, because I will need a few hours to do that. And besides that, I really want to focus on the what happens to the ego in the 6, 8, and 12 houses. So let's kick off. Okay, so just think about the 5th house, which is the house just before the 6th, obviously. And the 5th house is the Leo house, which is where the ego and personality has fully developed. It is fully expressed out there, okay, for everyone to see. You think about Leo personalities, Madonna. There's a good example for you, just someone that came up at the top of my head very quickly. There's loads of, obviously, people born under the sign of Leo. But you think about Madonna and her craft in terms of performing on stage. She's the performer, isn't she? Well, she's Leo. But, she has a lot of planets in the 12th house, and she has a lot of planets in Virgo, hence her obsession with health. Okay, so Leo is the personality in its full bloom, full expression, full of confidence. It's charismatic. It's very attractive on that level, because it just has incredible charisma, and it's external. It's the sun. It's the sun light and energy, just in its full glorious motion, So Leos shine in that way. So it's the personality completely, fully formed and developed on that ego level, right? So it's active, it's dynamic, it's confident, it's in control. It's the personality ego is actualized as much as it will be on that level. But when we enter the 6th house, which is what I'm going to focus on now, this is called ego denial. Virgo is not about any of those things that I just mentioned. So where Leo was all about, the party and having fun, and playing and creating on that creative fun level, because Virgo creates as well, but just on a very different level. So when we get into the Virgo house, which is the mind-body connection, by the way, so the 6th house is an earth house, and it's ruled by Mercury, and it's mutable. Mutable means changeable. It's not fixed, okay? The mutable signs are like chameleons, and Pisces is the sign that is the chameleon, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But what I want you to understand is that when we get to the 6th house, this ego denial is a massive, massive issue. You know, this is why when you look at the Virgo personality, what you see is somebody who is generally quite humble. They can be a little bit arrogant at times as well, but I think there's other factors that are thrown in. But in terms of Virgo, by its very nature, it's the perfectionist, it's the virgin, it's the work that we do, that the internal work that we do. It's the analysis, the self-analysis, the mind-body stuff. It's where we are realistic. You know, Pisces, the opposite sign, idealistic. Virgo, realistic. Virgo is the craftsman. You know, Virgo will just work away in order to perfect whatever it is they're working away at. And they still feel that they never reach that level of perfection. It doesn't matter how perfect they, you know, create something to be, that they will still be pushing further and further and actually saying, no, that's still not good enough. I still need to do more work on that. That's the nature of Virgo. It's seeking that wholeness, that perfection, that purity. So there's no room for the ego here. You know, how can you have that ego present when the mode of operation here is about, I need to work on every single detail here. I need to analyze everything. I need to check everything over and over again. If I'm practicing, let's just say, a dance move, and Virgo is not really the sign of dance necessarily, but when somebody is a Virgo or they have planets in Virgo, then they are dancers, well, I tell you what, they're going to practice a particular move over and over and over and over and thousands of times. You know, these people, they're relentless at perfecting something, a craft, whatever it is they're working with or on. So Virgo is the search for meaningful service, by the way, as well. So if you listen to that phrase, meaningful service. So it's they're wanting to offer themselves to some kind of cause or meaning. You know, they will fight for the underdog. They will create, you know, causes for the underdog, you know, that sort of stuff. They're not looking to be recognized for what they're doing. They don't want to be in the limelight. They want to be behind the scenes. Leo was in the limelight. Leo is up front in the limelight. It's me. You know, let the cameras shine on me. Let me show you what I'm made of, blah, 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 etc. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's just the inherent archetypal nature of Leo. You know, if we didn't have Leo in the zodiac, we wouldn't have all the drama in the world. And we wouldn't have these amazing performers in their artistry, you know, as seen through film, music, etc. But Virgo is not about that at all. Virgo just gets down into things, goes very deep within, and starts discerning and discriminating. Actually, those are two very good words for Virgo, which is why the Virgo personality archetype can come across as quite critical about others, and usually they are more critical of themselves. The more you hear them being critical of others, imagine that internalized, because it is, and it is directed to themselves in a much harsher way, usually. So you can see within all that, there's no space for, you know, me, let me show you what I'm made of, let me show you what I can do, let me show you how great I am. It's nothing like that. It's about actually developing a craft and perfecting it. So ego denial, that's the first experience of ego denial in the zodiac of the 12 signs. That's the first encounter of ego getting a bit of a blow, as it were, okay? A back step. Now, the signs, by the way, have esoteric rulers and exoteric rulers. So there's a whole branch of astrology called esoteric astrology, and I'll pop a link underneath this video later on, so that for those of you who are interested in esoteric astrology, there's quite a good website out there, which, yeah, I'll just pop the link and you can explore that yourself. But it is important, whether you study esoteric astrology or not, whether you follow it or not, it doesn't really matter. It does matter though, and it is important for you to know that the signs have exoteric rulers and esoteric rulers, okay? The exoteric rulers are the usual rulers that we work with in Western astrology, and the esoteric rulers are also part of Western astrology, but the esoteric, well, let me just start with this. The exoteric rulers are the ones that describe the external personality and characteristics of a sign, of a particular sign in the zodiac, and the esoteric rulers really connect to the spiritual aspect of a sign, and how that will work and correlate. And I'll tell you what they are in a minute. Well, I'll tell you what they are for the 3 houses that I'm talking about today. So the esoteric ruler to Virgo is the moon. Now, that's actually quite interesting, because its exoteric ruler is Mercury, as we know. So Mercury is connected to the mind. Now, with every sign that we look at, of course, we're always taking into account its polarity. In this case, the polarity for Virgo is Pisces. So, you know, Virgo, earth, it's earth, pure and simple, dry land. And the opposite, Pisces, is the ocean, right? So it's waterland, if you like. So when, you know, if you've got too many planets in Virgo and you've got no planets in Pisces, let's say, or the 12th house, too much Virgo is shines through as not a great deal of compassion for humanity, or for themselves for that matter, because Pisces, their polarity, their opposite, is a sign of compassion. So too much Pisces and no Virgo or no Earth, unable to get out of fantasy and dreamland and actualize themselves on this dry land, as it were, right? So you can see the link between, you know, every sign and its opposite, and how they actually complement each other. You know, they say opposites attract. That's a very common expression that's been around for God knows how long. And you can understand why that expression has come about. Opposites attract, because when you think about opposites in the zodiac, the polarities, the two opposite signs, they are each other's shadow, essentially. Okay, so you often find people who I'm an Aries, for example, then I will frequently perhaps attract Librans in my life. Although I haven't done that a great deal, I must say. I've attracted more other kind of signs, but Libra is my opposite. It is my polarity. It is my shadow. But I've got Libra in my midheaven, so you know, that's my life path, career, vocation, my purpose, how I'm seen on that sort of social level out there in the world, and I do that through my astrology work, counselling work, and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm sort of going off a bit too far now. Let me just refocus. So back to the Virgo house. Ego denial. It's the first encounter of ego actually taking a back seat. Now, I'm going to move into the Scorpio house because I do want to get through this. I said 20 minutes and I'm already on 14, and I've only just touched on Virgo. And I've literally just touched on it, right? This video, the purpose of this video is not to discuss in depth and detail the entirety of each house. The focus is the aspect of the ego component and what happens through these houses, as I said at the beginning. So let's move over to the Scorpio house, okay, which is a water house. Scorpio is a fixed sign, and you could say that the the heading for this house would be the search for transformation. Okay, now Scorpio is an incredibly complex sign, as is Virgo. Virgo and Scorpio, in fact, are the two most complex signs in the entire zodiac. And in terms of the ego complexities, the Virgo house, Scorpio house, and Pisces house, not signs, houses, are the most challenging for humans. When you've got a lot of planets in the 12th, in the 8th, or in the 6th, you've got a lot of shit to work through, basically. You've got a lot of stuff to work through. You've got a lot of things to uncover. You've got a lot of things to undo. You've got a lot of things to clear out, a lot of things to analyze, to understand, to work through, to redefine, to so much, you know. So really, I think when people have planets in those three houses, any of those three houses, they've got quite a challenging life, I would think, right? I've seen that anyway in many different people's charts and so forth. So that's my understanding and my observation when I look at those three houses and people's birth charts and what I've seen in these people's lives and what that has meant for them. So back to Scorpio. So Scorpio is all about desires. Okay, so desires on a number of different levels. We know that the Scorpio house is the house of sex, as they call it. That's such a limiting view, you know. The sexual encounter for Scorpio on a much transcended level is not of that sexual energy where one is just having sex with anybody for, you know, for no particular reason. Although I have to say, because Scorpio has three symbols, it has the snake, the eagle, and the phoenix. Those three symbols are connected to the sign of Scorpio. And if you go into mythology and read the various myths that are offered regarding the snake, eagle, and phoenix themes, you'll get a deeper understanding of Scorpio as well, okay? But obviously I'm not going to do that through this video. So getting back to the 8th house is the murky waters. You can't see what's going on in the 8th house. And if the person is a Scorpio, you can't see what's going on with them. You know, Scorpio is a sign of secrecy and privacy. And actually Virgo is an incredibly private sign as well. You won't really know what's going on with them because they're always working behind the scenes too. And Scorpio is definitely working behind the scenes. They are deep, deep into the unconscious, and they are working through murky waters and all sorts of stuff going on down there. Things like psychology and mysteries and shamanism, those sorts of crafts or practices, if you like, are very appealing to the Scorpio. When Scorpio is working, I guess, at a more transcendent level, okay, the snake, the eagle, and the phoenix represent the different sort of levels of Scorpio, or the Scorpio archetype of personality, right? So, for example, because Scorpio is a sign of desires on the sexual and physical, sexual physical level, but also on the desires around money, because the 8th house is the house of resources as well. So Scorpio has strong desires around resources, and it is other people's resources that they have an ability to tap into and tune into. They have a sixth sense about how to create money out of somebody else's platform, if you like. Okay. All right. So the 8th house as well is the house of death. So the 8th house, in terms of the ego, is the house of ego death. literally, right? So this is why this house is incredibly complex. The ego death that's going to happen for somebody who has planets in that house, or has their sun in Scorpio in the 8th house, or is a Scorpio, but actually we're talking about the 8th house here. There's going to be a death, rebirth experience and process throughout this person's life on many different levels. And you know, because Scorpio is an incredibly powerful sign. It has tremendous power. Its ruler is Mars and Pluto. They're the two power guns in the chart. They are the two planets that are going to they're going to exert their power through everything they do in their life, right? That's power. That's Mars and Pluto, right? Now, the esoteric ruler to Scorpio is actually Mars. And if you look at the esoteric rulers to all the signs, you'll find that they have a mixture of different rulers, some of which you'll look at and you'll think, well, how does that even fit? You need to study esoteric astrology to understand that. But it just so happens that for Scorpio, we've got a fitting, what appears to be a fitting ruler, which is the same as its natural ruler, happening to be Mars, right? Now, if the Scorpio house is the house of death and rebirth, then naturally when talking about the ego is going to go through multiple deaths through this house, as I've already mentioned. So that's right. I just wanted to touch on when you're looking at Scorpio from its multiple sort of levels, well, 3 levels actually, the snake, the eagle, and the phoenix. The lowest sort of manifestation of the archetype of Scorpio is the person who is totally dominated by their desires, right? So they are the people who will have, you know, multiple sexual relations at any given moment. They will be very driven by the monetary world. You know, their desires take over them, as it were, okay? Or literally, actually. So that's the lower kind of side to Scorpio, which then brings in the world of, you know, manipulating and controlling others, and basically in order to have their own desires met and fulfilled. So it's done from quite a dark place. Now, the 8th house is quite a dark house, and Scorpio can be quite a dark sign. It's just inherent within its archetypal expression and nature when it's operating at a more unconscious level. Every sign has the capacity to ascend and transcend and be more conscious, but there are some just some basic inherent aspects of each sign that until they become more conscious, they will remain at a lower sort of frequency level, if you like, unconscious level. Now, the 8th house is the house of unconsciousness as well, but not unconscious in the sense of not having any awareness, unconscious in the sense of penetrating very deep into the psyche and the unconscious of the self. So it's going into the world of the unconscious and going in there with a microscope, as it were, and looking very thoroughly and very deeply into all things of life and creation, the person, you know, mysteries, the sex